Join our Patreon.
Do you really want to know? We are Mythvision.
Dr. Price, we have another question from Zane Barnett in the Mythvision podcast group. I posted a video this morning and asked them for questions if they're interested. And he says, I'm currently reading this book on Kindle, and I'm curious if Dr. Price would agree with the conclusions of this author, if he has even read it. Thanks, man. The title of the book, The Angel Messiah of Buddhists, Essenes, and Christians, Classic Reprint, by Ernst de Bunsen. I believe I'm pronouncing that correct. And the description goes as such. Excerpt from The Angel Messiah of Buddhists, Essenes, and Christians. The conception of an incarnate angel as Messiah is of Eastern origin, and there is no trace of it in those portions of the Hebrew Scriptures which possibly were written before the captivity, nor in the first three Gospels. The angel Messiah, or Melech HaMoshiach, is a compound title which constantly occurs in the commentaries or midrashim, the records of scribal tradition, also in the Targums. Although this messianic name is not to be found in the Talmud, the latter designates as the Messiah the angel of God who followed the Israelites in the wilderness, and who is here called the angel Metatron, or he who stands by the throne. That angel Paul calls Christ. It can be shown that this new messianic conception was introduced into Judaism and into Christianity by the Essenes, or Essai, E-S-S-A-I, to whom John the Baptist, or Ashai, A-S-H-A-I, the Bather, probably belonged, and who are in the New Testament designed as disciples, designated, I apologize, as disciples of John. Jesus opposed the principal doctrines of John, whom he designated as not belonging to his kingdom of heaven, or of the Spirit, which he declared as having already come, whilst the disciples of John had not even heard whether there be any Holy Ghost. The disciples of John, the Baptist, or Essene, must have accepted that the Spirit of God would be brought from heaven to earth by him who should baptize with the Holy Ghost. And about the publisher. Okay, yeah. So, anyway, it sounds interesting. You've never read it, I suspect.
No, I've never heard of it, though. I know Hugh Schoenfield, who wrote the Passover Plot, which is a modern example of the old-time rationalism. It's a fascinating book. He sort of takes it all. The gospel stuff is history, but he connects the dots in a different way, that a kind of a rationalistic, naturalistic approach. But really interesting. But my favorite book of his is his Authentic New Testament, as he calls it. And it's his translation with a Jewish background and so on. I love that version of the New Testament. In the book of Revelation, he refers to Jesus as the angel Messiah. And this... Again, I don't want to make it look like I've read the book. I haven't, but it touches on things I have been reading recently, and one of them is that the idea of Metatron, which Gershom Scholem says can't be Greek. I mean, by the throne or after the throne. But I just can't accept that. It seems to me it has to be based on the Greek. Though I know about as much about Jewish mysticism as my cat Pixie there. But I've studied his work a good bit. And there was this tradition of having these exalted, glorified patriarchs, Jacob, Moses, Melchizedek, Enoch, Abel, etc., in various Jewish groups in the the various apocalypses of Enoch and on into the next few centuries. And this was the angel of Yahweh, who was called the Lesser Yahweh, and he sat at the right hand of God, and he was the glorified patriarch. This is discussed in David Siegel's great book, Two Powers in Heaven. He traces he's not the only one, but I think he's the first one to really trace that and explain it. This was a cause for controversy in Rabbinic Judaism, where they knew Jews talked about this, but said, you're destroying monotheism. And you could say it was, I guess, sort of an Arian versus Athanasian idea. How divine were they? So the idea of an angel Messiah, well, scholars like Larry Hurtado and others have said this is the way to understand the ascension of Jesus. And Hurtado, may he rest in peace, he was an evangelical, and he's another one of these guys who I think was sort of slanting it to try to vindicate traditional Christology, but nonetheless very learned and interesting writer. He was trying to explain New Testament Christology with this, and others have too, and there's got to be some connection. So that's one thing. I'm surprised this writer knew about this and theorized this earlier. Well, the Buddhist connection, that's like people like Michael Lockwood, and in Denmark, Christian Lindner, argue with surprisingly compelling data and perspectives the idea that Jewish monasticism, which we know of as the Qumran sect, Essenes, whatever they were, and the therapeutai that Philo talks about in Egypt, that where did monasticism come from? The closest thing in the Bible to it is the schools of the sons of the prophets with Elijah and Elisha, but they're not exactly monks, because one of the major Elisha stories has one of the widows of one of those guys in need, and Elisha helps her. So who knows if they were, well, these guys, Lindner and Lockwood, say that it probably came out of Buddhism. We know for a fact that the Emperor Asoka sent Buddhist missionaries into Egypt and Syria in the 2nd century BCE. I mean, you don't have to just posit this. We know that happened. And could it be that, and there are all sorts of naming data, like are the therapeutai, which we usually think of as meaning the healers. Is this a version of the Theravada sect of the earliest type of Buddhism? Simon Peter, the sidekick and disciple of Jesus, is that Sariputra, who had the same role with respect to the Buddha, and many other startlingly similar things, like a longer version of the parable of the prodigal son, and just all sorts of stuff. And there's J. Duncan M. Derritt wrote a couple of books comparing the two traditions, trying to figure out who borrowed what from whom. It used to be taken seriously, and now the notion is kind of a laughing stock among conventional scholars, but these guys are sort of reclaiming that old tradition. It sounds like this fella may have said the same thing. And Buddhists certainly had a messianic figure, Maitreya, the future Buddha, and so on. So I'm eager to read this. I'm going to order it as soon as we're done here. It sounds very fascinating.
Yeah. Join our Patreon